Friday, 6:40 p.m. The parking deck under North Lake Health Network smelled like wet concrete and old coins, the kind of smell you get where people make decisions they never plan to explain later. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, bleaching everyone into the same sickly shade of temporary, even though none of us were temporary. I sat in my car in the contractor lane, engine idling, watching reflections slide across the hood like nervous thoughts you don't say out loud. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The elevator doors opened, and laughter spilled out first. It's always sound before faces. Lila stepped out with her phone face down in her palm, like it was warm. Her hair was perfect in that careless way that takes 20 minutes and a mirror she pretends not to trust until it finally agrees with her. She didn't look toward my car. Not because she didn't see it, because she didn't need to anymore. I'd become infrastructure, useful, invisible. Gideon Rusk followed half a step behind her, expensive shoes, relaxed shoulders, the posture of a man who knows which rules bend and which people do. He stayed close enough to be intentional, not close enough to be obvious. That gray zone was his natural habitat. Tessa Wynn came out third, clipboard tucked under her arm, tote bag swinging like stage props. Her eyes scanned the deck, not nervous, just thorough. When Lila slowed for a moment, Tessa shifted, casually placing herself between Lila and my line of sight. Not abrupt, gentle. Like a waitress sliding a napkin between you and a stain. I thought, great. My marriage has a PR department now. Lila headed for the exit. I got out of my car at the exact moment she should have noticed me. She did. She just chose not to acknowledge it. "You're late," she said, like my existence had missed a deadline. "Traffic," I replied. Calm voice, neutral smile. The kind you wear when you don't want to become a story other people tell. Gideon gave me a polite nod, the kind bankers use right before denying a loan. "Nate, right?" he said, even though we'd met before. Men like him enjoy asking twice. It keeps you slightly lower without raising their voice. "Yeah," I said. "And you're Gideon. Hard to forget." Tessa laughed like I'd made a joke. I hadn't. I just marked the room. "I see you." Lila pulled her bag closer to her side. Her wrist flashed. A new bracelet. It hadn't been there this morning. I hadn't given it to her, and I don't miss details, because details are how quiet things fall apart. "Tessa and I need to go back to the office," Lila said. "Urgent. Comms messed something up again." "We." She loved that word when we didn't include me. "I'll head out then," Gideon said. "Lila, text me when you're done." The way he said it, casual, assumed, made it feel like I wasn't standing next to my wife, but next to a woman scheduled by another man. "Okay," she said, and slipped her phone into her bag too fast. Tessa touched her elbow. "Let's go. Before he—" She stopped herself. "Before it gets late." She didn't say, "before they close." She said before it's too late. I could have imagined 10 endings to that sentence, and I wouldn't have liked any of them. When they left, I stayed under the buzzing lights and watched Gideon get into his car, the kind people buy not for driving, but so other people feel worse about their lives. He pulled out slowly, unbothered, like someone who knows no one is going to stop him. I drove home alone. That wasn't new. What was new was how official it felt, like a stamp had finally come down. Lila came in close to 9, showered, changed, wearing the perfume she used for confidence. She set a bag of sushi on the table like a bribe in a trial where I was the only juror. "Sorry," she said. "It was hell. Tessa made me stay. Gideon was there too. He just helped out. Just helped." That phrase covers everything in this country, from moving furniture to moving people into beds. It's fine, I said. Then, so she wouldn't have a hook, I added. Eat before it gets cold. Her eyes flickered, irritation, quick and sharp. She'd wanted a fight. A fight makes a good story for friends. See? He's unstable. My calm ruined the narrative. Calm doesn't sell. When she went into the bedroom, I cleared the table and brushed against her coat on the chair. The sleeve was damp at the edge, not rain. The kind of damp you get when someone holds your hand too long and you wipe it away to erase the feeling. My fingers closed around something solid in the pocket. Not keys, not a phone, a valet ticket, black cardstock, gold logo. Time stamped 7:12 p.m., and the name of a place no one from her department just ends up at after work. I stood there holding that ticket, thinking how fast a person can break once they stop believing words and start believing paper. In the garage, I opened a box labeled later. In my life, later usually means never. I took out a small dash cam, nothing fancy. I'd bought it 6 months earlier after a near miss at an intersection. Lila had called me paranoid. She liked that word. It sounds like an insult, but it works like a sedative for liars. I mounted the camera under the mirror, checked the angle, hit record. The screen showed my garage. Ordinary, unheroic. My phone buzzed, a text from Lila. "Don't wait up. I'm going to bed early." I replied, "Okay." And right then, through the small window in the garage door, I saw headlights. A car stopped 2 houses down. Not close enough to be seen from our kitchen. Close enough to be seen by me if I happened to look. The engine stayed on. I stood there watching the light pulse through the glass and thought, good. So, it's not my imagination, it's someone's schedule. And in that schedule, I'd just become an unnecessary line. Saturday mornings used to mean pancakes and pretending we weren't tired of each other yet. Now they meant silence and the careful choreography of 2 people sharing space without sharing truth. Lila slept late, or pretended to. I didn't check. I've learned that watching someone sleep after you stop trusting them feels too much like surveillance, and I wasn't ready to become that version of myself. Not yet. I drove instead. The dash cam blinked red as I pulled out of the garage. Recording. Always recording. There was comfort in that little light, not because it promised justice, but because it didn't care how charming anyone sounded afterward. That's when my cousin Cal called. "Nate, buddy," he said, voice already rehearsed. "You sitting down?" "No," I said, "which means you're about to ask for something expensive or illegal." He laughed. Too hard. "Relax, minor thing, accident." That word, accident. People use it like it's a blanket you throw over consequences to keep them warm. 20 minutes later, I was on Route 17, rain coming down sideways, hazard lights ahead blinking like a warning label nobody reads. My car, sat at an angle against the guardrail. The hood was crumpled, steam hissed, and Cal was standing beside it, holding his neck like an actor waiting for direction. He saw me and sighed with relief. "Man, I knew you'd understand." "I understand physics," I said. "What happened?" He launched into it smoothly. Brakes failed. Car pulled. Nothing he could have done. He emphasized nothing, like it was under oath. The state trooper glanced between us, bored. Another cousin. Another story. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I walked around the car instead. Took in the angle of impact, the tire marks, or lack of them, no skid, no panic brake. "Were you on your phone?" I asked. Cal scoffed. "Seriously?" "No reason," I said. "Just curious." Insurance did the rest, or so I thought. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. Thick envelope, legal tone. Cal was suing me for his medical bills. Claim, I failed to properly maintain the brakes. Damages, neck, back, pain, suffering, a shopping list of imaginary injuries. Lila read the letter over my shoulder, arms crossed. "Your family is unbelievable," she said. "This is why I hate drama." She said your family the way people say your problem. I didn't respond. I just nodded, folded the letter, and put it in my jacket. Because the dashcam existed, Mara Danes existed too. Mara had been my attorney once, years ago, when a contractor tried to pin his mistakes on me. She liked facts. She didn't like people. It made her very good at her job. She watched the footage twice. No commentary, just the rain, Cal's car drifting lanes, the phone glow in his hand, his head tilted down seconds before impact. Texting, speeding, no brake failure, she said. He's done. What about his claim? I asked. She smiled thinly. Denied, and we counter. We did. Insurance dropped him like a hot plate. Then we sued Cal for the full value of my car plus legal fees. His lawyer folded in under a month. Cal stopped returning calls after that. At the hearing, he wouldn't look at me. People think revenge feels loud. It doesn't. It feels administrative. The check came 2 weeks later. Enough to replace the car. Enough to remind me of something important. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to exist on record. That night, Lila poured herself wine and stared at the check longer than she should have. So, she said carefully. You had footage? Yeah, I said. Why? She shrugged, too casual. Just surprised. You never told me. I didn't think it mattered. She nodded, but her jaw tightened. Later, when she thought I was in the shower, I heard her whisper on the phone. No, he doesn't know, she said. Just keep Friday open. I'll handle him. I turned the water colder so she wouldn't hear my breathing. Friday. People who lie always think in dates. They think control lives on calendars. I started thinking in timelines instead. Sunday came in soft, like it was trying not to get noticed. Gray sky. Quiet street. The kind of morning that convinces people nothing bad ever happens before noon. Lila moved around the kitchen carefully, like someone borrowing space they didn't own anymore. She made coffee. She didn't drink. Checked her phone face down. Rechecked it 10 seconds later. I watched all of it the way you watch a card trick once you know where the deck is bent. You're quiet, she said. So are you, I answered. She smiled. The professional one. The one she used at work when she needed someone to feel heard without actually being listened to. I was thinking, she said, maybe we should do something this week. Together. We've both been busy. There it was. The preemptive alibi. Fill the calendar so nothing looks empty later. Sure, I said. What did you have in mind? She hesitated half a second too long. Dinner. Friday maybe. Friday again. Friday works, I said. Relief flickered across her face before she could stop it. Not happiness. Relief. Like a bridge holding longer than expected. After she left for a quick errand, I sat at the table and opened my laptop. I didn't digging leaves marks. I organized. I listed facts only. No conclusions. No feelings. Friday, 7:12 p.m. Valet ticket. Charity event Gideon mentioned last month. Lila's phone behavior changed 3 weeks ago. Tessa's sudden involvement in our schedule. Patterns don't accuse, they just wait. I drove to the hardware store and bought things that looked boring enough to be invisible. A doorbell camera, a garage camera, basic models, no audio where it didn't belong. Nothing hidden, nothing illegal. Just enough to remember what people later pretend never happened. Back home, I installed them slowly, carefully, like I was building a shelf I might have to rely on during an earthquake. The doorbell cam covered the porch and driveway. The garage cam covered the interior, pointed at the cars. No bedroom, no bathroom. I wasn't interested in becoming the villain early. Mara had warned me about that when I called her. Documentation is power, she said. Illegality is weakness. Don't confuse the two. I won't, I said. Also, she added, if she's cheating with someone tied to her work, don't think in terms of confrontation. Think in terms of structure, policies, timelines, who answers to whom. I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification from the neighborhood group chat. Someone posted about a break-in 2 streets over. Someone else replied with a prayer emoji. Lila liked the post within seconds. Public virtue. Private math. By evening, she was back, showered, dressed, ready to leave again. Dinner with Tessa, she said. Last-minute thing. Of course, I said. Bring leftovers if you can. She kissed my cheek. Quick, light, like a stamp. The doorbell cam recorded her leaving. Calm, purposeful. She didn't look back. 10 minutes later, a different car rolled past the house. Slowed. Didn't stop. Same color as Gideon's. Could have been coincidence. Could have been habit. I didn't follow. That was the hardest part, learning when not to move. Instead, I drove downtown and parked across from a place I knew Lila avoided because everyone there talks. I ordered bad coffee and watched people arrive and leave, pretending not to watch anyone in particular. At 7:34 p.m., I saw Tessa walk in alone. At 7:41, Gideon. At 7:58, Lila. She didn't sit with either of them at first. That was new. A delay tactic, plausible deniability, even in her own head. I left before any of them did. Back home, I checked the cameras. Nothing dramatic. Just footage. Honest footage. Lila returned at 10:22 p.m., alone. She paused in the driveway, typed something on her phone, then deleted it. Inside, she smiled at me like she'd practiced. Dinner was exhausting, she said. I'm sure, I replied. Later, when she slept, I sat in the dark and replayed the night in my head. No cheating caught on camera, no smoking gun, but something better, a schedule, a rhythm, a system. People think traps are dramatic. They're not. The first trap is always small, and the people who walk into it usually don't feel it close. Friday arrived wearing good intentions and bad weather. The sky stayed low and metallic, like it was listening. Lila moved through the apartment with purpose, dressed better than necessary for a casual dinner. She checked herself in the mirror twice, adjusted her bracelet once, didn't ask what time I'd be home. I might be late, she said, already halfway out of the room. Take your time, I replied. She smiled at that. People always do when they think time belongs to them. I didn't follow right away. I waited 12 minutes, long enough for confidence to set in. Then I grabbed my jacket and keys and drove downtown, the dashcam's red light blinking like a patient witness. The charity event was held at a renovated riverside warehouse. Brick walls, warm lighting, banners about community and impact. Inside, people drank and nodded like agreement was a sport. I didn't go in. I watched the side entrances instead. At 7:19 p.m., Gideon arrived. Valet, quick scan of the street, smile on. At 7:27, Tessa, no valet, parked herself, eyes already working. At 7:34, Lila. She didn't go through the front doors. She turned the corner and disappeared down the service corridor like she'd been there before. That's when I moved. I stayed across the street, blending into the quiet economy of parked cars and people who look like they're waiting for someone. Rain started to fall, light at first, then steadier, the kind that blurs faces and forgives mistakes. 10 minutes passed, then the side door opened. Gideon stepped out first, jacket already unbuttoned. Lila followed, laughing too loudly for the empty street. Tessa came last, scanning behind them, her body angled outward like a shield. They headed toward the parking deck across the road. I waited until they turned the corner. Then I followed. Not close, not obvious. 2 car lengths back, then 3. At the first red light, Gideon checked his mirror. I slowed, let another car slip between us. At the bridge, traffic narrowed to 1 lane. Construction cones forced patience. Rain streaked the windshield. Gideon's brake lights flared. For a moment, just one, he slowed enough that I could have closed the gap and let him see me clearly. I didn't. Power is knowing when not to be seen. The light changed. He accelerated harder than necessary. The car between us fell back. Suddenly, it was just him and the road and me, pretending not to exist. At the next intersection, he turned without signaling. I didn't. I kept going straight. The chase ended there, not because I lost him, but because I chose to. I wasn't here to be dramatic. I was here to learn how he moved when he thought no one was watching. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back toward the warehouse. That's when I saw my car. Not wrecked, not broken, just touched. A fresh dent above the rear wheel. Small. Precise. The kind you make with a door when you're angry but controlled. A note tucked under the wiper. Stop following. No signature. No explanation. I stood there in the rain, reading it twice. My first instinct was to laugh. My second was to memorize the handwriting. Tight. Confident. Written by someone who'd never been told no with consequences. I drove home slow. Lila was already there, hair damp, makeup redone, calm in that practiced way that says I've prepared an ending to this conversation. "You look tired," she said. "So do you," I replied. She tilted her head. "Long night?" "Productive," I said. She studied my face, looking for cracks. Finding none annoyed her. "I'm going to shower," she said. "Take your time," I repeated. As she walked away, I felt something settle in my chest, not anger, alignment, because now I knew something important. Gideon didn't feel powerful. He felt threatened, and people like him only do 2 things when that happens. They escalate, or they make mistakes. I was counting on both. Saturday morning came with a headache that wasn't mine. Lila moved through the apartment quietly, too quietly, like sound itself might testify against her. She wore the calm face people practice when they've already decided how a story ends and are just waiting for the audience to catch up. She poured coffee, didn't drink it, set the mug down and left it there, cooling, like a prop she'd forgotten to use. "We should talk," she said finally. That sentence always sounds mutual. It never is. "About?" I asked. She sat across from me, folded her hands, and leaned in just enough to signal sincerity. I'd seen this posture before. It was the one she used at work when she needed someone to feel respected, right before she redirected them into a hallway with no exit. "You've been distant," she said, "and tense. People are noticing." People, plural, convenient, vague. "I'm fine," I said. "Just busy." Her mouth tightened for half a second. That wasn't the answer she wanted. "I've had a few friends ask if everything's okay," she continued. "They're worried about you." There it was. The first brick laid gently, like it was doing me a favor. "Which friends?" I asked. She waved it off. "That's not the point." Of course it wasn't. The point was that she was already talking, already framing, already editing. I nodded slowly. "If they're worried, tell them I appreciate it." That threw her. Just a little. Concern without defensiveness ruins a clean narrative. Later that afternoon, I met Mara at her office. She listened without interrupting, fingers steepled, eyes steady. "She's not just cheating," Mara said when I finished. "She's building a preemptive version of you." I leaned back. "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said. "By the time the truth surfaces, she wants witnesses ready to say, well, he was always a bit unstable." That word again. The polite cousin of dangerous. "She's baiting reactions," Mara continued. "She wants texts she can screenshot, moments she can retell, a tone shift." "So I don't give her any," I said. Mara nodded. "You document instead. Short responses, neutral language, no late-night confrontations. You let her overproduce." On the way home, I replayed every conversation from the last month. The way Lila would ask questions that weren't questions. The way Tessa suddenly checked in more often. The way Gideon mentioned, casually, how messy divorces could get if people didn't stay calm. They weren't hiding an affair. They were rehearsing a defense. That evening, Gideon called. Not Lila's phone, mine. I let it ring twice before answering. "Nate," he said, warm and reasonable. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "I don't," I said. A pause, not long, just enough to register surprise. "Look," he said, "Lila's been under a lot of pressure. You know how work gets. People talk. Things get misread." "I agree," I said. "People do talk." He exhaled, slow. "I don't want this to get ugly." That word didn't belong to me. It belonged to consequences. "Then it won't," I said. After the call, I sat in my car and watched the dashcam playback from the previous night. Not for proof, for behavior. Gideon drove like someone who'd never been stopped, like someone used to roads bending around him. That's when I saw it. Not on the footage, but in my head. Gideon's vulnerability wasn't crime. It was reputation. He was up for something. Promotion. Board seat. A contract that required him to be clean. The kind of clean that isn't about law but about image, about being trusted in rooms with expensive furniture. And Lila? Lila had hitched herself to that trajectory like it was a life raft. I didn't need to burn anything down. I just needed to remove the insulation. That night, Lila came to bed without touching me. "I just want us to be okay," she whispered into the dark. I stared at the ceiling and thought, you should have picked a simpler lie, because by then I knew exactly what she was really building, and I knew where to put the weight to make it collapse. Part 6. When fear becomes personal. People like Gideon confuse expensive gates with safety. They think access control equals control. In reality, it just tells you exactly where a man expects danger not to be. I didn't go looking for him right away. Desperation makes sloppy decisions, and I wasn't desperate. I was patient. Patience is what you get when panic runs out of energy. 3 nights later, his townhouse complex showed up in my routine like it had always been there. Gated. Cameras obvious enough to discourage teenagers, not subtle enough to catch intent. A security booth staffed by a guy who nodded at everyone and remembered no one. The kind of place built to keep out threats that announce themselves. I parked across the street and waited. The dashcam stayed on. Always on. At 10:11 p.m., Gideon's car rolled in. Slower than usual. Careful. He'd changed after the note, after the dent. Fear had introduced itself, and he'd answered. I walked in behind another car before the gate fully closed. No rush, no drama, just timing. The parking structure smelled like oil and concrete. Honest smells. Gideon stepped out of his car and froze when he saw me. Not shock, recognition. The kind that says, I hoped you wouldn't do this, but I knew you would. This is a mistake, he said quietly. No, I said. This is a correction. He laughed, sharp, brittle. You can't be here. I am, I replied. That's the part you don't like. He stepped closer, posture stiff. He was taller than me. That mattered to him. It mattered less to me. You think you're scaring me, he said. I didn't answer. I closed the distance and slapped him, once, open hand, controlled, loud enough to echo, not enough to injure. The sound did more work than force ever could. He staggered back, stunned more by humiliation than pain. I leaned in, close enough for him to smell rain on my jacket. You don't get to touch my life and walk away clean, I said, and you don't get to decide how this ends. He swallowed. His eyes flicked toward the cameras. Good. I stepped back immediately, hands open, calm. Anyone watching would see a confrontation end, not begin. That's assault, he said, voice thinner now. Call it whatever helps you sleep, I said. But hear this part clearly. I nodded toward his car. Everything you have works because people think you're untouchable. Tonight, that changed. I turned and walked away before he could respond. 2 floors down, I did the other thing. Nothing permanent, nothing illegal, just enough to turn confidence into inconvenience. A few careful seconds at the front of his car, A small, cruel detail introduced into his evening. Something he wouldn't notice until later. Something that would make him late, make him uncomfortable, make him seen. I was back on the street before security realized anything unusual had happened. Mara called while I was driving. "You can't do that again," she said. No anger, just fact. "I won't," I replied, and I meant it. Once is a message, twice is evidence. When I got home, Lila was sitting on the couch, phone in her hand, face tight with worry she hadn't rehearsed enough yet. "Where were you?" she asked. "Out," I said. She stared at me like she was trying to decide which version of me to file away. "You're acting strange," she said. I smiled, just a little. "So are you." My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "You think this is over. It's not." I deleted the message without replying, because the thing Gideon didn't understand yet, the thing none of them did, was that fear doesn't end fights. It shortens them, and once fear becomes personal, people stop playing defense. They start making mistakes, and I was ready to collect them. By the time Saturday evening arrived, the city had already chosen a side. It didn't know it yet, but cities always do. They tilt toward whoever understands how noise travels, how silence spreads, how a rumor can outrun a siren if you feed it correctly. Lila stood in the bedroom tightening an earring that didn't need tightening. She checked her reflection, then checked it again from a different angle, like the mirror might contradict itself if given time. "Big night?" I asked from the doorway. She flinched, barely, but enough. "Just an after-event thing," she said. "You know how these go." I did. I just hadn't been invited. She left wearing the version of herself she used for rooms with money. Calm confidence, curated warmth, the kind of smile that says, "I belong here," before anyone asks why. I waited 5 minutes after the door closed. Not for strategy, for alignment. When you rush, you bring yourself with you. I needed less of myself tonight. The venue was a rooftop bar attached to the same charity's private appreciation reception. Glass railings, heat lamps, a view of the river that made people feel important for standing near it. The guest list wasn't public, but the optics were. Everyone there wanted to be seen by the right people and invisible to the wrong ones. I didn't walk in like a husband. I walked in like a man who had every reason to be there. Neutral clothes, no jacket, no drama. I nodded at the host like we'd met before. People assume familiarity when it's offered calmly. Lila spotted me across the space and froze. Not shock. Calculation. Gideon noticed next. His reaction was different. His smile stayed in place, but the muscles around his eyes tightened. Fear had taught him new posture. Tessa wasn't far behind them, already whispering to someone, already adjusting angles. I took a drink I didn't want and stood where people could see me without having to acknowledge me. That's where power lives, in peripheral vision. The first rehook came fast. A woman I recognized from the hospital board leaned toward Lila and said something sharp enough to change her expression. Not loud, just precise. Lila laughed too hard in response. Gideon stepped in, hand on Lila's lower back. Ownership disguised as reassurance. I watched people watch them. That's the thing about stories. Once they start circulating, you don't control where they land. Mara's email had gone out earlier that afternoon. Clean, professional, no accusations, just a request for clarification regarding timelines, conflicts, and representations made at prior events, CC'd to exactly the people who cared about appearances, not HR, not legal. Oversight, the kind that asks questions politely and remembers answers forever. Gideon moved toward me like he was crossing a room he owned. "We need to talk," he said, low. "We are," I replied. "This ends tonight," he said. "It already did," I said back. His jaw tightened. "You're embarrassing yourself." That one almost made me laugh. "I'm not the one pretending," I said. "I'm the one stopping." He grabbed my arm then, not hard, just enough to assert, a territorial reflex. I looked down at his hand. Slowly, deliberately, I removed it. "Careful," I said. "This is a room full of witnesses." That's when Lila arrived. She slid between us with practiced ease, palms up, smile ready. "Please," she said. "Can we not do this here?" Her eyes met mine, sharp and pleading at the same time. "Not what?" I asked. "Talk?" She lowered her voice. "You're scaring people." "No," I said. "I'm reminding them." That's when the second rehook landed. A man from Gideon's firm approached, older, polished, eyes already tired. "Gideon," he said, "we need you downstairs, now." Gideon hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Lila saw it. So did I. "What's going on?" she asked. The man glanced at me, then back at Gideon. "Questions." Just that. Questions are worse than accusations. Accusations can be denied. Questions have a way of staying open. Gideon followed him, shoulders stiff. Lila watched him go like someone watching a door close without knowing what's on the other side. She turned to me. "You planned this," she said. "I prepared," I replied. "There's a difference." "You're ruining everything," she whispered. I leaned in, close enough that only she could hear. "You did that when you decided I was a problem to manage instead of a person." Her face hardened. "You think this makes you the good guy?" "No," I said honestly. "It makes me the ending." Across the room, Tessa was already on her phone, typing fast, head down. Damage control. Spin. She caught my eye and looked away. The rooftop felt smaller now. Heat lamps hummed. Glass reflected faces people didn't recognize in themselves. Then Gideon came back. His smile was gone. He didn't look at Lila. He looked at me. "You think this is leverage," he said quietly. "It's not." "I know," I said. "It's timing." He stepped closer again. Too close. His voice dropped. "You have no idea what you just started." I nodded. "That's the part you're wrong about." His hand twitched, a thought he didn't follow through on. Good choice. Cameras, witnesses, consequences. Lila reached for him. He didn't take her hand. That's when she understood. Not that she'd been caught, that she'd been outpaced. My phone buzzed. One message, from Mara. "They're asking for statements tomorrow. He's not walking into that clean." I looked at Gideon one last time. "This was your last quiet night," I said. "Enjoy it." I turned and walked out before anyone could stop me. Behind me, the rooftop buzzed with confusion, half-formed explanations, and the unmistakable sound of a story slipping out of its owner's hands. I didn't slow down, because the final move wasn't about exposure. It was about forcing the truth into daylight, where no one could put it back. By Sunday evening, the city felt tighter, like it had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. I didn't go home right away. I drove along the lake instead, slow, windows cracked, the dash cam blinking red like a quiet promise. Water has a way of flattening things, sound, ego, lies. People think it hides secrets. It doesn't. It reflects them until you get tired of pretending you don't recognize your own face. Lila called 3 times. I didn't answer. The 4th time she texted, "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Out of her hands. Important distinction." I parked near the public lot by the marina, the one everyone uses because it's visible, well-lit, and full of people who mind their own business as long as nothing demands their attention. Gideon liked places like this. He believed witnesses were protection. He was already there when I arrived. Standing by his car, phone pressed to his ear, pacing, not smooth anymore. His jacket hung wrong on his shoulders, like it belonged to a different man. Lila was a few steps away, arms crossed tight around herself, eyes darting between him and the lot entrance. Tessa wasn't there. That told me everything. When spin stops working, professionals disappear. I got out of the car and walked toward them. No rush, no posture, just a man crossing asphalt. Gideon saw me first. "This is harassment," he said, loud enough for it to sound official. I stopped a few feet away, close enough to hear his breathing, close enough for him to feel seen. "No," I said. "This is closure." Lila stepped forward. "Please," she said. "Not here." "Here is exactly where," I replied. Gideon scoffed. "You think you won something?" I tilted my head. "I think you lost something." He laughed, sharp, desperate. "You don't have proof of anything that matters." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, not to show him messages, not to play audio, not to expose anything dramatic. I turned the screen toward him and pressed play. Dashcam footage. The marina lot. 2 nights earlier. Gideon's car entering too fast. Phone glow lighting his face. Him laughing at something on screen. The near miss with a pedestrian. The security guard shouting. The license plate clear. The timestamp clean. Nothing illegal for me to have. Nothing illegal to show. Just truth, doing its quiet work. Gideon's face changed. Not fear, calculation, collapsing. "You can't use that," he said automatically. "I already did," I replied. Lila stared at the screen like it had bitten her. "What is that?" she whispered. "Your future explaining itself," I said. She turned to Gideon. "You said this was handled." He didn't answer. That's when the real damage landed. 2 people from the oversight committee crossed the lot toward us, not in a hurry, not angry, curious, concerned. One of them nodded at me, polite, distant. They weren't here for a fight. They were here because patterns had been noticed, because questions had been asked, because Gideon's name had come up too often, attached to too many quiet clarifications. Gideon straightened, tried to recover his posture. Too late. "This is a misunderstanding," he began. One of them raised a hand. "We're not here for explanations. We're here to schedule a conversation." That word again. Conversation. The kind that doesn't end careers instantly. It bleeds them out slowly, in rooms without windows. Lila looked at me then. Really looked. Not angry. Not sad. Lost. "You did all this? Just to hurt me?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I did this because you tried to make me disappear politely." Her mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. Gideon took a step toward me, rage finally cracking through the polish. "You think this is over?" he hissed. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to lower his voice or embarrass himself. "It is for me," I said. "For you, it's just beginning." He clenched his fists. Didn't swing. He knew better now. Fear had finished its lesson. The oversight members turned away, already dialing numbers, already reshaping calendars. Lila stood frozen between 2 men she no longer recognized, one who'd never loved her, and one she'd underestimated. I walked back to my car. No final speech, no victory lap, no forgiveness. I started the engine. As I pulled out, the dash cam caught Gideon in the rear view. Small now, shouting into a phone that wasn't saving him anymore. Lila sat on the curb, head in her hands, the narrative she'd built finally collapsing under its own weight. The light turned green. I didn't look back. The story ended there, not with redemption, not with healing, but with the truth standing in the open, and everyone finally seeing who had really lost control. I hadn't even cleared the parking lot when someone knocked on my window, not hard, 2 fingers, confident. I lowered the glass halfway. Gideon stood too close, close enough that I could see the tiny cracks in the finish of his watch, the kind you get from hitting desks when no one's watching. "You think you won," he said. I didn't answer. Behind him, Lila was still on the curb, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the ground like it might explain how she got there. "This isn't over," Gideon continued. His voice was low now, controlled, the last version of control he had left. "You crossed a line." I smiled, just enough. No, I said. You lived past one. His jaw tightened. He glanced around. Cameras, people, light. The world he depended on to behave. You don't scare me, he said. That's fine, I replied. You already changed. For a moment, just one, I thought he might do something stupid, step closer, touch the door, give me a reason. He didn't. Instead, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and I watched the exact second his face emptied. Not panic, recognition. Someone else had started calling. Someone whose name mattered more than mine ever did. He stepped back. Lila finally looked up at me then. Her eyes searched my face like there might still be a version of me she could reach. There wasn't. I raised the window, put the car in gear. As I pulled away, the dash cam caught Gideon standing there alone, phone pressed to his ear, nodding too much, agreeing to things he didn't understand yet. The light turned green. I didn't slow down. That was the last moment any of them still thought this was a misunderstanding. And then it wasn't.